So when you're doing mobile first, responsive web design, one of the things that you realize right away is that the handling of images is sort of a problem. So let's take this for example. I've got a section here with an image, and this image is sized to be mobile friendly, mobile first, right? So it's 300 by 200 pixels, it's a JPEG. We're pretending it's a hero image. I've styled it so that it always takes up 100% of the width of its container. So as I get larger and larger, you'll realize and you'll notice that this image starts to get really, really pixelated. Now, you probably don't notice it as much here, but if this had been, I don't know, a headshot or a nice picture of a sunset or something, yeah, a 300 by 200 pixel image isn't really going to cut it at much larger sizes. Um, so one of the ways that we can deal with this, now there are many responsive images techniques, but one of the ones that gives us the most control is the picture element. And the picture element is a new element that you wrap around your image. All right, so let's try that. I'm gonna put, actually I'll just type picture and hit tab. And what I'm gonna do is take this image and move it up inside of our picture element. Now, the key to using the picture element, or one of the most important aspects of it, is that uh, you always place the image tag at the bottom. All right, we're gonna add some more content up top, our different image sizes, but this image tag always goes at the bottom. And the reason is, there's a few reasons for this. One reason is that if the browser is older, now most browsers support the picture element, but if your browser is older, it's going to ignore the picture element and just load the image just as it is. So this is technically, it's considered the fallback image. All right. Um, and when we add items up top, we use the source tag to do this. Now I've got two more images. Now they're effectively the same image. They're just larger sizes. Um, so we can do this using the source attribute, or source tag, excuse me. Um, and we do source set, and we specify the image that we want to use. All right. I'm going to start with the tablet size, like this. Now notice I didn't use another image tag. There's only one image tag here, right? The picture element basically, based on what we supply for these source tags, chooses the appropriate one and effectively swaps the source. So we then use a media attribute. Now this is like attaching a media query to our image. And we can say something like, okay, this is fine at till about, I don't know, 500 pixels. But once it starts to pixelate, we want to swap it out with a better quality version of this one. So we need to format this just like we would any regular media query. We can do min width of, let's say, 500 pixels. So if this evaluates as true, then this source file gets swapped into this place right here. So at a minimum width of 500 pixels, so we start with our mobile size, and then once we get to 500 pixels, it's hard to see. Let's do this. We'll number these so we know exactly which one is which to make sure everything's switching at the correct time. So we start on our mobile with Hero 1, We go to 500 and it should switch to our next image, which is Hero 2. Much more crisp image, right? But then at a certain point, let's say like 800 pixels, this starts to get a little pixelated. So we want to swap out one more image. So let's go ahead and take our desktop size and I'll use the same source for our desktop size. But I'm going to change this to a 3 so that I know when this image gets placed in there. All right, now I don't need these anymore. And we'll say once we hit 800 pixels, right? So we've got our tablet size, our desktop size, and our mobile size. So we've said once you hit a minimum width of 800 pixels, let's use this version of the image. All right, so let's try it out. We've got our default image, our hero image here, right? Then once we hit 500 pixels, we go to Hero 2. And then once we get to 800, we should hit Hero 3. And it's not working. All right, so this is the other aspect that's extremely important when you're dealing with the picture element. The order matters. I mentioned before that the image tag needs to be last when you're dealing with the picture element. Okay, that's your fallback image. Typically, this is your smallest image, right? Especially if you're doing mobile first. No matter what, this image will load. The problem is, the way that the picture element works is that it reads these sources in order. And as soon as it finds one that's true, it uses it. So the reason why our third image, our Hero 3, didn't get swapped out, it's because this already evaluates as true, right? Even at 800 pixels wide, this still evaluates as true. So you have to be careful about the order, right? In order to make this work the way we want it to, we want to put this desktop size first, the biggest size first, all right? So now, this should work. We've got our mobile size, our default size. We've got our tablet size once we hit 500 pixels. It gets swapped out for a larger version of our hero image. And then once we hit 800, there we go. Swaps out with hero image 3. So that's the picture element in a nutshell. As I mentioned, the most important aspects as you're going through this, make sure your image tag is last. You put your source tags on top and understand that as the browser renders these, the first match, the first one that evaluates as true, is what gets placed or swapped out as the source here. So they have to be in the correct order, right? So in this case, we're basically going from the largest size down to the smallest size. And we're using min-width queries to dictate at which size we're changing the image. The last thing, two more things I want to note. The alt attribute is always placed on the image tag, right? We don't add alt attributes on the source tags. We only place the alt attribute on the image tag. Assuming these are all the same images, in most cases they are the same image, the alt attribute is going to be the same, regardless of what these are, right? They're just larger versions of this image. So that's where you want to put your alt attribute. Um, the other thing that I want to mention is the picture element is a lot more advanced than just this. This is a very simple use case where we're just swapping out different sized images at different screen sizes. Um, but you can use these media queries just like you would any other media query. We can test for pixel density. We can test for image support, right? We can actually do a query here that'll test for um, the type of image. Um, you can make these even more complex by having supplying multiple images at each screen size. There's all sorts of things that you can do with the picture element and the source tags. We're not going to get into that, but just know that it's extremely, extremely flexible and allows you to do just about anything you want with swapping out images based on browser support, based on device capabilities, whether it's screen size or pixel density or anything like that. So there you go.